14 or 15 of their employees, and we spent all day on the reservoir cleaning up. We dodged some thunderstorms that day, and but we were able to basically do almost the entire perimeter of the reservoir, which was great. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to get to know each other, and also because it's such a wonderful company in Waterbury. It's a wonderful thing. I also want to thank Orca Media for being here tonight. Thank you very much. And this is a wonderful opportunity for Vermonters to see what's going on their show. I don't know quite what you call yourself. Public access? Thank you. I also need to thank the Agency of Natural Resources who provides us with training and a grant to operate one of our more visible program, which is the Greeter program. The Greeter program, if you're not familiar with it, the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir run this program. Our people are not employees of Vermont Parks and Recreation, but they do interact with each other, obviously. They're part of us, and they're going to do a presentation for us this evening, pretty early into the evening, because I know somebody needs to leave early. And so we'll give you a report on that one. But Agency of Natural Resources grant has a lot of funding for this program. This year, their funding is paying about 72% of the cost of running it. So we still need to raise money for the additional amount, but it's much more than it has been in the past. With that, it's been about 30%. We also couldn't do this with a lot of our companies in the area who support us. Alchemist Brewery, Concept 2, American Flatbread, Northfield Savings Bank, Laura Perrette, which runs LP Designs, did a redesign of our logo. We want to thank her. We also need to thank the towns of Stowe and the towns of Waterbury, which support us with a town appropriation, and that helps us a lot to meet our goals. As far as the raffle is concerned, the businesses who have donated to our raffle: McGillicuddy's Restaurant, Bisbee's Hardware, Bill Bobro, who's here taking photographs. I don't know he's hiding. Oh, there he is. Vermont Cattle Pups also has donated some pictures. We have the Mike and Debbie Bard who donated a picture over here. We act Outdoor Outfitters. Vermont Forest Parks and Recreation has donated we have to give away 2 punch cards for visits that don't expire, so they're available for use. I think you get 10 punch cards to come into a state park. And Tractor Supply has also supplied us with an item from their store. I'm going to hand this over to Eric, our president, and he is going to take over the next part of this meeting.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody. And I want to introduce our board. My name is Eric Chinden, President. Sheila Goss, she's our Vice President, and photographer. And Sheila, how many days last year did you go up to canoe?
250, 222 so far this year.
Every day, even if it was Christmas Day, she was out there last year.
222 this year so far.
And you just
260.
and see.
260.
And Mike, would you set up show your hand? There he is, Mike Bard. The unforgettable Mike Bard. Steve Brownlee, is he here?
I don't think he's here yet.
He's coming.
And Walt Carpenter. He's our resident philosopher over there. Anybody needs a little boost, just call on Walt. And Emma Brownlee. Emma Brownlee is a constant worker for us, and she and her father run Umiak Outfitters up in Stowe. John Bauer and Tyler Keefe. John Bauer is in Germany at a memorial service, so he couldn't make it tonight. On the tables were some, people are asking about the status of the dam, when it's going to be repaired, for how long, and all that. And there are papers on the table. You should take one home. We printed about 40 of those, and you're welcome to take it home. It's got a lot of dates in there. They're all sort of, they're not definite, because it's all about funding. And the funding, I should put out a little information about when the dam was built. There were about 2,000 workers down there. It took years, and the cost of the dam, the total cost was $3.4 million. This repair, just on the tailor gates, it's going to be between 67 and 95 million just to fix that one little piece. So a lot of this, and Vermont's going to be responsible for 50% of it, I understand. So it's all depending on when the money comes in as to when they will take the rate down for about 3 summers. They're looking at 2025, 26, 27, but none of that is definite. Let's see here,
Wake sports.
the status of our wake sports petition. This is an interesting thing. It's from coast to coast. The wake boat sports are grabbing a lot of headlines, and the cost of a wake boat these days, up until this point, has been about $150,000, and as you hear, it seems to be all true that the damage to the ecosystem and so on. But the one that's coming out now, if you can look it up sometime on your computer, it's called the gigawave. And the gigawave is costing about $600,000, and it makes a wave that will create a pipeline. You hear about the pipeline when you go out to Maui. Well, and so you can actually surf inside the pipeline of this wave that's created by this boat, and without a rope. And their advertising is that it's been created in a way that will make Maui jealous. That is their actual advertising. So the laws that are being made today relative to on the wake boats, they're really we're making rules for something that's already going to be history, so to speak. And of course, they're expensive enough that it's not a boat for the average person. The average person couldn't afford it. So we put a lot of work into our petition. I want to show you, if you want to read it, it's a very nice read. But there should be some of these little pieces of paper on the table. You can look this up when you're at home, and you can read the petition. A lot of us spent literally hundreds of hours on this petition. It has to be right, no fluff, to state what you want, what you're looking for, and so what you do, you read it, you reread it, you change it, and it took months to do, and it's that way. It's not something that anybody's going to create in a weekend. So I suggest you go online and read that. And
Eric, can I ask a question?
Margaret?
Can I ask a question about the wakeboard?
Sure.
So this petition, I thought that the state had already ruled on it, and it was kind of a done deal. So what's the petition for now?
That's a good thing. Those of us who testified up until last February 15th, the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, LCAR, voted. Now they do their hearings between 7 and 8 in the morning, so you got to be an early riser to do these LCAR hearings. And it was a kind of a momentous decision that they made. It wasn't what we wanted overall. It was, we wanted a stricter one that included more lakes, but it protects, over 30 lakes are protected from this. The Waterbury, the lakes have to comply with a depth of 20 feet, 500 feet from shore, and
A minimum of 50 acres.
what's that?
Minimum of 50 acres.
And, oh, minimum of 50 acres, that's right. So, and so that, the Waterbury, on the Waterbury Reservoir, there are 3 arms. 2 arms are protected, but one isn't, and that's the dam arm. It's kind of it's an interesting situation because, you know, the rental groups like Umiak and other people coming in from the Burlington area to paddleboard or whatever, the dam, everybody is allowed to use the dam arm. However, it's not getting used. So you go down there and you see this beautiful days, very few people out there, and there may not even be a wake boat there, but it's the threat of a wake boat coming and flipping people over. So by default, you can say that the dam arm is off limits in some ways. You got to be aware, and these boats create a powerful enough wave to even flip a pontoon boat and almost fishing boats and so on. So you just have to be, if you're going out there, enjoy the lake, stay close to shore, pretty close to shore, but you just need to be on alert that a wake boat can come, and all of a sudden you're dealing with some very, very heavy waves.
So, can I add something? Can I add something?
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I think you're asking is the rules that determine how lakes are used. Individual lakes can put in petitions specific to their lake. And so what has happened is there were, at one point, I believe it was over 70 inland lakes that were allowing wake sports to occur on their lakes. When the new rules came in, and there are good rules, it dropped it to 30 lakes. So the Waterbury Reservoir currently is one of the 30. What is happening is individual lakes are putting in petitions because they feel they're seeing, they understand the risk, and they really would rather they weren't there, quite honestly. We're talking about the sport, per se. The actual boats, I don't think, they can still be there, but they can't be in wake sport mode when they're on these lakes. So what we've done is an individual petition. Currently, there are 8 petitions before the A&R. That's a lot for them. They're overwhelmed. We are aware of at least maybe 2 more that are writing their petitions. So we anticipate at least a third of the 30 lakes will be putting in individual lake petitions. So what we're doing, this is an individual lake petition for the Waterbury Reservoir.
That explains, do we sign here?
Yes, if you want to know when the public hearings, what the process is, we file the petition, they're going to review the petitions in November of this year, and they can say, no, this one doesn't have merit, we're not going to go any further with it, or they can say, yes, this has merit, and they're going to start calling public hearings. And
So they're going over these right now, and in some of them they may dismiss altogether because it doesn't meet certain things that they're looking for. But ours is pretty tight, and we have some advantages here. And one of them is that there's not one home on the shoreline of our lake. So that should help make the decision a little bit easier. And,
So I'm presuming this petition then is to eliminate the area that's allowed right now for legal. That's to get rid of it entirely.
well, yes, exactly.
And also, the rules that are in place now, on one of these pieces of paper here, this one here, there's a letter that I got yesterday from a gentleman named Paul Smith. He is a reporter in Wisconsin, and got to know him while this whole legislative thing was going on. We've developed quite a good relationship. But it's the thing that he wrote yesterday to me was very interesting and very heartwarming, because what he said is, essentially is that here's Vermont again, setting this, setting this thing and actually developing part of what's happening, and we really inspired a lot of states, especially Wisconsin and some of the big fishing states up there, so in that area, Minnesota.
So this is a nationwide debate, just so you know, it's not just in Vermont. And so this is something that is being debated throughout the country. So, but Vermont right now has the strictest rules about limiting lake sports on certain lakes.
In Vermont, are there any teeth in the regulations?
Well, that's a really good question. I can't answer that right now, but there are fines. It's all about how it's enforced, quite honestly. I will say, for reasons of our time, I may ask, we're going to stay later after our speaker, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to answer more questions. I am passing around a hard copy of our petition as it was presented to A&R. I only have 2 copies in the room, and ask you not to take it with you. So if you want to take a quick look at it, you'll understand it more. But it is a state, lakes are allowed to do lake-specific petitions, and that's what this is.
And I want to add that the reason that we put this little sign-up paper on the tables is that they put a lot of weight on who shows up and speaks in the letters that are written. The letters are important. You can start sending the letters in now. We can add those anytime to the petition, but there'll be a specific date and time, and that we want to have 20, 30, 40 people show up for comments. It's a real game changer in this process. Usually I'm the guy.
I'm a timekeeper. So I'm actually up next. So I just wanted to do a quick finance report for this organization. I tried to do it very briefly. I don't go into any detail, but I do have more specific information I can share with anybody who wants to call me. We basically, we are an unpaid board, so we're all volunteers, and I want to say that every board member works a lot on this organization, and you should think when you are introducing them, just be sure to thank them, because it's a lot of work to do a nonprofit. Currently, as I was saying, our invasive species, our breeder program, which addresses the spread of invasive species between lakes, is our largest piece of what we spend money on. The program actually costs the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir a little under $15,000 to run. And right now, that is helping us fund 2 days every week at 2 dam sites, the Blush Hill site and the dam site for the boat launches, excuse me. And then we also did a pilot program this summer at the day use, where we had our speaker tonight will talk about her experiences with the program, and that was, she was able to do about 8 hours every 2 weeks, or 4 hours a week at the day use area. That was a pilot to see if it was something we should continue to do, and we're still debating that now. As I said, the state currently is paying about 72% through their grant this summer. This is the most they've given us since I took over as treasurer. It's been closer to 40%. So that's huge, but we still need to raise money for the rest. We are, as a board, very fiscally conservative and responsible, and I think everything gets looked at very closely. Our annual budget currently is around $15,000, which is, as I said, mostly the breeder program. We have cash on hand right now is a little bit under $10,000. It's $9,700. So last year at this time we had about $6,000 cash on hand. So we're going into 2025 for a small organization in a really good fiscal spot. And again, it's thanks to everyone who supports us, because we couldn't do it without it. And that's my report. Is there any quick question? No. And then Sheila Doss, who's our vice president, will talk about two of our favorite.
Our programs, yes, some of my favorite programs. The first is our loom recovery program that we work with the Vermont Center for Eco Studies. We started a few years ago building a loom raft. Once we saw that we had a pair of looms, and I caught them mating one day, I said, oh, we better build them a home. But they don't like our home. They nested last year. In fact, my photograph on the raffle table was last year, the loom sitting on the egg for the first time ever, documented egg on the reservoir. Unfortunately, not from the big flood last year, but from a rain event before that, it got washed out. So we go every spring, we rebuild the loom raft, we put it to the same spot where they've been mating and laying eggs and doing their loom things. This year, the flood, it ended up half a mile down the reservoir. We put it right by the mouth of where the little river enters the reservoir, and it ended up south of the landslide area. So we're going to rebuild it next year. We're going to put different flotation devices in it that will make it more amenable to the up and down, because what happens right now is when it goes up and down the level, the oyster tube flotation devices slip out. So Eric Hansen has some new flotation. We're going to put that in. We're going to chain it to that tree this year so it doesn't float downstream. And we had a very unconfirmed, no evidence of a loon chip on a loon's back this summer. One person saw it. Of the tens of thousands of people that use the reservoir, only one person saw it. My guess is any of you that watch loons know that sometimes they put their tail feathers up and they kind of make a little ridge on their back. And from a distance, it can look like they have a chip, but it's not. So it's an unconfirmed report. We never found the nesting. We never found eggs. There is a loon chick on the reservoir right now that my guess is on it because it's all by itself. And it came from another lake because they hang out when the adults go to Maine first. The juveniles hang out for longer until they get strong enough and then they fly off. So my guess is it's from another local lake. It's hanging out at our reservoir, and when it gets strong enough, it'll fly off, hopefully before it gets iced in. We still have our resident pair of eagles, a male and a female. We have this year I've seen a 1-year juvenile and then the 3-year juvenile that's on my slideshow catching a fish. The juveniles, we have no evidence of their nesting, but we have a resident pair, male and female, that I've seen probably over 100 times this summer. So they're there and they're doing well. And they seem healthy, and they fish, and they fight with one another, and they fight with the herons, and they have a grand old time. The fish line recycling bin program is going great. We have collected less material this year, less discarded fishing line, which is a good thing, because we're not also finding it on the shorelines and in the water. So either people are getting the message and are not just throwing their fish line around, or they're taking it with them, or the weather was such that the fishing wasn't good and we canceled it. It could be either one. But the Vermont Center for Eco Studies has stolen our design. No, we didn't steal it. We gave it to them. We invited them, and Eric Chicken told them how to build it. And they, I believe, have about 30 of them now around the state. And it's part of their lead program, too. It's originally designed for recycling fishing line. Now it's like any lead tackle, anything that's going to harm our birds, put it in the bin, and that program is working really well.
Sheila, can you tell them the reasons for picking up those fishing lines?
Well, the fishing line is because of entanglement, and a good percentage of our Vermont loons that die every year die because they either ingest lead is extremely toxic, or they get entangled. And a lot of birds, not just loons, even beavers and muskrats and any animal, herons, they can get entangled and they can't eat and they starve to death. So it's important to pick that stuff up.
And it needs to be recycled, not put into the trash, because you've seen the trucks unloading trash.
Yeah, they'll go to
There are
landfills
hundreds of
and they'll
birds
pick it out of
flying around there
landfills.
trying to get trash, and they get tangled up. And not just birds, but other wildlife.
We also were blessed this year with 3 gray egrets that actually hung around for about a month, which was pretty amazing, because occasionally you'll see them, and he'd be here one day and gone the next. But first it was 3, and then I think the pair chased number 3 off. The third wheel got booted. I don't know where he went. But the pair stayed for at least a month. Fishing, eating, as you can see the picture up there, he caught a crayfish. So it was really, really nice to see them for at least a month. There's also a white-winged scoter that hung around for most of the summer. His picture is up there too, his or her, I don't know. They're a funny-looking bird, and they don't normally come here. But this one hung around for about 3 months, mostly at the southern end, but I did see him the last time I saw him, he was at the northern end. Last week I saw a pied-billed grebe, which is also a migratory visitor. I saw him one day, I didn't get a picture of him in time to put it in the slideshow. So we still have quite a nice variety of wildlife, and that's one of the reasons for our efforts for all this conservation. The fishing line bins, the wake boat petition, because obviously the wakes can upset the environment for the birds. So anyway, so those are our nature programs that again are dependent on volunteers. We all work really hard on it, but also all your donations and your contributions get put to that good cause. Thank you.
Jalen, okay, I'm gonna bring the sign. Jalen's sign, because if any of you have gone into one of our great, if any of you have been out to one of the boat launches on the reservoir, you see bright yellow shirts and this sign. And tonight we're fortunate to have, we had 3 readers this summer, which was huge. This is a big change for us, covering both Saturday and Sunday. Jaylyn is at her 3rd year doing this. She's also a student at UVM in the Environmental Studies Department. I think that's right.
Science.
Say it again.
Environmental science.
Environmental science. And so she's graduating this year, so I'm not sure, she's got lots of plans, I'm sure. But she's going to talk about the program and what we accomplished. We also have Fletcher, who's also another UVM student who was over at the dam. If you didn't get a chance to meet her, stand up. She, again, bright yellow shirt, and loved the sign out of her car. And Phil Bobrow, who is mostly at the Flesh Hill, who is our also resident photographer. Thank you. I'm going to let you go.
All right, so my name's Jalen, and I was the coordinator this year for the Greeter program. And on the next slide. So this is our team this year. We didn't get a picture together, but
What's that?
So today our team was myself, Phil, Fletcher, and then we had Francine and Eric. The funny thing about these pictures is that in the first picture on the left, this was pre-flooding, and then you can kind of tell that the picture on the bottom right, we were flooded, but we didn't get a group picture together this year, but with everybody, but these are the 2 that we got this year. So what are aquatic invasive species? Aquatic invasive species are basically a nuisance and non-native to a water body that they're introduced to, and they can either be brought in intentionally or unintentionally, and they're able to thrive due to a lack of pathogens and predators in the area. And what makes them so successful as invasives is that they reproduce quickly, they can outcompete the natives, and they don't have the predators or the pathogens and stuff like that. Currently at the Waterbury Reservoir, we only still have brittle naiad, which is really good. So the Greeter program has been working very well. So what do we do as a greeter? First, we go and we approach boaters and we ask them if we can complete a survey. And the DEC gives us a survey to fill out on survey 123. And it asks questions such as, what was the last water body you were in? Were there any invasives found on the boat? And stuff like that. And so we inspect their watercraft with their approval, and we collect and identify any specimens that we find, which there were no specimens found this year, which was really awesome. And we collect and report the data, and it goes back to the state, and they get data on that, and we can also see the data, which is a really cool feature. And we also distribute educational materials on invasive species for people who have questions and who may not be familiar with them. So these are the current invasive species found in Vermont. I'm not going to go over all of them, but we have brittle naiad, which is the one that we have, and Eurasian water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, European frogbit, starry stonewort, water chestnut, and variable leaf water milfoil. And there's also 4 invasive species that are currently not found in Vermont, but are on a watch list, especially hydrilla. That is considered one of the worst invasives, and it's in the water bodies that are kind of surrounding Vermont, like the Connecticut River, I believe, and places like that. So they've been having breeders especially look out for that invasive species. And there's also parrot feather, Brazilian water weed, and Carolina fanwort. So this year, traditionally in the past, we've had a breeder at the dam and one breeder at the Blush Hill boat launch. But this year, there was like Francine was saying, the pilot program with the Day Use Center, which is where I would go for half the day. And it was actually, I think it was a really good addition to the program, specifically because I found that a lot of people did not, well, not a lot, but a lot more than when I was at the other boat launches, didn't actually know about aquatic invasive species. So I found it really helpful in everything, and I was able to teach more people about them. And I think overall it was just a really good addition, especially like the Waterbury, or the Day Use Center sees a lot of wake boats, which is a big problem. So it's good that we have a breeder there checking out the wake boats and everything. So this is the data that we got. I got this off of Survey 123, which is the form that we fill out. And this year, between the 3 boat launches, there were 681 boats greeted, 428 inspected, and it said that there were 5 decontaminated, but the Waterbury, none of the boat launches at Waterbury have the ability to decontaminate any boats. So there's something a little bit off with the data there, but yeah, that's the only inconsistency I found with that data. And then breaking it up by watercraft, there were 214 kayaks greeted, 176 outboard motorboats, 101 canoes, 98 stand-up paddleboards, 53 inboard motors, 22 pontoon boats, 8 jet skis / wave runners, 4 sailboats, and 1 wave boat greeted at the between all 3 centers. Which I think another inconsistency with the data is that the state hadn't put in, since the Waterbury Day Use Center was a brand new area that we were greeting at, they hadn't exactly put in, you select under the survey where you are, and so that you can so that the data gets broken down and they can tell like where to go check for invasives if you find any and stuff like that. So some of the data may not be in there because they didn't have the option for the Waterbury Day Use Center. I had to put it in as other the whole season, so there could have been more boats greeted, more and all that. So. And then, was the boater familiar with AIS? This year, 90.16% said that they were familiar with AIS, and 9.84% said that they weren't, which I believe is a little bit bigger within the no category than last year, but I think that might be because of the new boat launch area that we were looking at. And then, when asked if they would check for AIS in the future, 97.36% said yes, and 2.64% said no. Any questions?
So those numbers that you gave, those were just for the days that you were taking, that the breeders were taking notes, right? It doesn't include the after hours, the other days of the week. So there's a lot more, but this gives us a pretty good idea. And a little statistic on the invasive species in the reservoirs. Brittle naiad is what we've had. I think we're on our 9th year doing this program. And brittle naiad was in the lake before we started the program. And, so I guess we can compliment ourselves in a way because despite all the boats that come from Lake Champlain, which is infested with everything, in other words, we have not had any additional invasive species. So either we're lucky or the program is helping a lot. The local, the people who come frequently, they got to know us and got to know the breeders, and they say, geez, I just left home and I hosed my boat down, I did everything I was supposed to do, and so they're into it. For the most part, you'd say they're appreciative, aren't they?
Yeah. I haven't come across anyone that was very against what we were doing or rude about us looking at their boat or anything, which is really nice.
Thank
I want to thank Jalen.
Gentlemen.
One more, yes.
You said you don't have the decontamination abilities at the Waterbury Reservoir. So what would happen if you found some invasives on a boat that you were inspecting?
We would take it off of the boat with the boater's permission, and then we send it off to the ANR, and we recommend to the boater that they clean, drain, and dry the boat and not enter the water body.
If they don't enter the water body?
We suggest it, but we can't force them not to do it.
Yeah.
Or,
If you haven't met our floating ranger, you have a treat meeting Ben Fulton. He's here to do a report on this summer. And it sounds a lot like last summer's report.
Very similar. Yep.
He's with the Vermont Forest Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, my name is Ben Fulton. I'm the park manager slash ranger. Take care of the 27 remote campsites around the reservoir. This year, yeah. Last year we did reservoir dogs. This year we saw another change in staffing. Cody Smith, who was the assistant manager for 2 years, moved on to regional maintenance tech. So Kyle Page, who was attendant last year, stepped up and took his place. We have 2 new park attendants, Patrick Boris and Anna Haley. And Kyle has since left the park, so Patrick has taken over as assistant. The quality of our staff team is always our greatest asset, and VT State Parks is always hiring, so if you know anyone who needs a fun seasonal outdoor job, you can visit vtstateparks.com and send an application. I mentioned last year that the quality of our campers has increased since implementing the reservation system, and this year has definitely continued with that trend. Instances of vandalism, damage to plant life, undesignated camping and fires, and injuries that require our response are at an all-time low. I wrote less than half the incident reports this year than I did last year. But despite this, there are a few examples of incidents, as you can see here. Someone stole the map off the Blush Hill boat launch just like they did at Moscow and left some lovely graffiti, and people always carving their names in trees. When they do that at campsites, we have their name and phone number and all that, but this was at a day-use site, so we really have no way of knowing, other than that their name was Brooks, presumably. I forgot to include a slide about this, but we had less than a 1% increase in camping this year. I imagine that's because, once again, we had to close for a couple weeks during our busy camping season because of flooding. Each year, our region's forester, Chloe Sardonis, marks trees that she identifies as hazardous to campers. This year she marked 18, which is significantly fewer than the 50 that had to be removed after last year's flood. We once again teamed up with the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps, and we were able to take down almost all of these hazard trees. This keeps our campsites safe during floods and windstorms and all that. The VYCC crew completed a few other small projects, including a tent platform over at Site 1, which was, because of erosion, lost a bunch of the flat space there for tent sites, and additional steps at the sites that already had stair entrances, where the water had undercut the staircases. So I want to address a question that a lot of people have asked me about. I've noticed it too. People have been parking increasingly poorly at both the Blush Hill and Dam boat launches. As much as I wish I could, I cannot write them tickets. It's not something that I have the power to do. But in a couple of weeks, I'll be submitting a detailed recommendation regarding clearer signage and sign locations in my end of season report to regional management. Each year we document changes in our 2 main invasive species, brittle naiad and Japanese knotweed. This year, a visiting group from UVM used drone photography and AI algorithms to map brittle naiad on the southern part of the reservoir that's on the left there. I think that's pretty cool. Japanese knotweed on the right has spread since last year. It continues to dominate the northern part, and there are small patches of it down south. All those little dots down there are maybe like one small plant. Unfortunately, the only way that we can really treat it is with chemicals, and we can't really do that because of the water. It would affect the water quality. So all we can do for now is track it. All right, flooding. As I'm sure you all know, this July was a repeat of last year's flood. During its peak on July 12th, the water level on the reservoir was 11.5 feet over normal and didn't return to normal for about 2 weeks. As a result, we once again had to cancel all reservations for at least a week, and a few more badly impacted sites were closed for up to 3 weeks. Anyone who had reservations, they all got refunded. Most people were really understanding about it, and you know, they'll come back another time. This graph shows this year's flood in the blue line, and last year's flood just hours, maybe 12 hours before that, in the brown line. It really happened at the exact same day.
Ben, those graphs are online, right?
Yes.
So-
Yeah, if you search Waterbury Reservoir water level, the first result will be the USGS website that has all the data for water level. So if you ever want to check what the water level's at before you head out to the park, you can do that there.
Occasionally they'll lower the water level so that they can do repairs on the equipment, the power generation equipment or something else. But if you're traveling some distance, you have a boat, or if you're traveling some distance for anything, this is great to go on. They went down 7 feet, I think, early in the spring.
Yep, it was pretty low this spring.
It was pretty low, so you couldn't launch your boat. So you don't want to be caught in a situation where you drive a long distance and can't get in the water.
Yeah. But because it was so low this spring, you could see a lot of the one or two of the foundations in the water that you wouldn't be able to see normally. It's pretty interesting. I just have a few photos from the flood this year. This year we were a lot more prepared for the flood. We saw the forecast ahead of time and knew this was a possibility because of last year. This combined with our experience from last year meant that our recovery was a lot faster. So number one, that's our storage shed over at Little Rivers Beach. The water came just up to the door this time and didn't affect any of the equipment inside, unlike last year where the water was up to the door. Number two, that's Little Rivers Beach from their path down to the beach, completely underwater. You can see their rental canoes right there. Number three, there's a man sitting on Blush Hill Road, overlooking where the boat launch and the parking lot normally is. And number four,
the parking lot problem, didn't it?
yeah, right. And number four is Umiak's Shack at Waterbury Center, where they rent out canoes and kayaks. Didn't tip over this time because it was properly secured.
The story's holding it down.
Yeah, they were helpful. Finally, I'd like to thank Waterbury Reservoir, Friends of Waterbury Reservoir for what they accomplished this year. Their greeter program and fishing line collection programs continue to be a success, and their bare hand kits to continue to see good use. I've lent out at least one every busy weekend, and people are always happy to have them. They always return them in good condition. So, yeah, people definitely like those. Any questions? Yeah.
Knotweed, of course, which is everywhere, and in Red River Valley, they're using goats
Really?
to remove them, and it's quite successful.
I wonder how viable that would be in a place where we can't drive the goats out to the...
Talk to Eric, who runs the chamber. He could give you some of the information.
I know I'm not allowed to have dogs on my boat, so I wonder if goats...
Not quite the same thing.
Not quite, you know,
In my, I
fuzzy.
mean, there's tons of it down there. And like I said, this woman trains them and throws them out there and apparently they do a good job.
That's cool, I'll look into that. Maybe it's something we could do when they drop the water level for the dam repairs.
Too
Anyone
bad
else?
we can't teach them to fight the people.
Yeah, yeah.
Once the park closes, I assume enforcement goes to state police and Fish and Game?
So enforcement is always state police and fishing. My job is to educate people if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, but I can't really enforce.
Okay.
Good?
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
We're gonna do a little reset for our speaker, but we're gonna do the draft, we're drawing the raffle tickets. So if you have bought raffles,
Listen up for your name and your number.
yeah, and then there's quite a few, they're just gonna draw one from each bowl. Hopefully the person will have the winning raffle ticket still in the room. And Mike is gonna do the honors.
Okay, the first one is wildlife picture from summer 2024. And the winning ticket is 820433.
So the next one is for the Vermont State Parks punch card. And the first ticket is 820412. And what was that number? Yeah, it was 820412 and 820406. Anybody? All right, so this is for the wildlife picture here.
what we're gonna have coming. Anyway.
Oh, I got it.
I'm sorry, there were so many beaver puns, some of which I couldn't. I'm sorry, I had to be very selective. Anyway, we're really pleased tonight that we have Kurt Winter with us. Some of you. For our rodent critters. And one quick question. First I was told that beavers cannot carry rabies because they're rodents. Then I was told that no, beavers do. There is a strain of rabies that beavers can carry.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Anyway,
I don't want to mislead you one way or the other, so.
Anyway, all right.
But if you see them bark.
Well, I don't want to bite beavers that way. Anyway, here's Kurt.
Well, good evening. First of all, thank you to, first, my voice carries in the back, you can hear. Secondly, I wanted to thank the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir for inviting me to speak to you. And I come from a long line of if you take and get an audience, the first thing you do is tell a joke. So I went to my doctor, and this is not a joke, I went to my doctor and I said, what kind of test do you do for mental competency? And he says, oh, that's easy. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to fill up a bathtub and I'm going to ask you, I'll give you a bucket, a spoon, or a cup and ask you which one you're going to use to empty the bathtub. I said, oh, well, I know the answer to that because the normal person would use the bucket. He says, no. Do you want a bed by the window? I'd pull the plug. All right. Anyway, I wanted to, can everybody see that properly? I've been asked to talk about beavers, and we have the nature's master builders. Here in North America, it's called the Castor canadiensis, and a similar beaver in Europe, which has some of the same characteristics, is known as the Castor fibber, but it has some differences, underlying differences. When you come up and look at the display, you'll see that I also have some muskrat out there. Muskrat is in the same sort of family, but the beaver is normally 60 pounds, the muskrat is 3, so it's much smaller. The beaver has a flat tail, the muskrat has a rat-like tail. The largest rodent in the Americas, South America, is the capybara, and it weighs up to 100 pounds. So the beaver, it outweighs the beaver by 40 pounds. And it is also, it can also be a nuisance down there. The muskrat doesn't have webbed feet, and I have both the beaver and muskrat feet out here so you can compare them. Prehistoric ancestor of the beaver, 1 million years ago, weighed 800 pounds. And you can see there's a tooth right there being held by a hand. That's the back tooth, the molar, so it's pretty big. Molars are ribbed. Historical background in North America. Originally pre-colonial, before Europeans came, there were 60 to 80 million beavers in and estimates of maybe up to 400 million. And these were based on trapper records after the colonials came in. Native Americans had already exploited the beaver both for food and for its fur. And what you see here is a picture of a pole lodge that a trapper would normally use when he was running his line. The beaver for the Native American was a sacred center because it created rich water habitats for a lot of different animals and plants, some of which were fish, frogs, turtles, birds, ducks, moose, otter, and muskrat. We consider it a keystone species for exactly that reason, because it will take a dry meadow with a stream running through it, dam it up, and bring in all these different plant and animal species. So beaver was the original economic driver in North America. The newly arrived immigrants sought to make a living, so they traded in beaver, and they also, in making the living, they supplied the European market. The first traders were the coureurs de bois, which were French Canadians that would go out into the wilderness, trade with the Indians, run a trap line, bring the furs back. As they exploited the lands close, they went further and further westward, and they explored and mapped a lot of the tributaries and rivers out towards the west. And then they obviously got new territory for exploration and for settling. The first fur company was Hudson's Bay, which was founded in 1670. And by 1790s, they were shipping 30,000 pelts annually to Europe. So if you think of the amount of people working that's quite a large number. And between 1853 and 1877, there were 3 million pelts that had been exported, which over that 24-year span is an average of 125,000 pelts per year. So that's a lot of beaver that went out. John Jacob Astor was the first robber baron who supported or who made his fortune from the fur trade, and he recognized the decline in fur-bearing animals and retired in 1834. A trapper's annual salary at that time was $50,000. So a trapper was quite rich if he got to enjoy his wealth. There was a large demand for beaver for hats. The beaver, and when you come up and you touch you get to feel the fur, and we'll talk about this a little later on too, the felt that is closest to the skin keeps the skin totally dry. It's waterproof. And that fur, that felt, could actually be used to form hats that were waterproof and could be formed in water as wet. The military, as you can see by the pictures here, the military was a large consumer of those hats. The beaver faced extinction because of the advent of the steel trap and also because of the high demand of the European market. And the consequence was that there was a huge decrease in the population, which changed the regional balance of water. And just for some numbers, 17 million cubic meters of lost storage capacity of water and sediment in ponds between 1600s and 1840. So ponds went dry, dams went away, rivers continued to flow, and that water didn't go into the aquifers, or it just eroded riverbanks and so on and so forth. In today's world, we still have contemporary fashion. You can get hats, coats, boots, a whole bunch of different things. And a coat costs between $5,000 to $10,000 for a run-of-the-mill design coat. If you want something special, you can pay a lot more for it. Castorum, which is the scent gland of the beaver, found at the base of its tail. The beaver eats a lot of birch, and the birch has salicylic acid in it, And so the castoreum also has salicylic acid. And salicylic acid is actually what aspirin is based on. So Native Americans used to eat or use the castoreum for headaches and things like that. Also colic, epilepsy, frostbite, a whole bunch of different things. Its castoreum is also called birch bark or birch tar or Russian leather. And it is a bitter, orange-brown, smelly, oily secretion. And when you add alcohol to it, it smells like vanilla. So the reason why that's important is because it's an excellent base for musk, a musk base for flower-scented perfumes. And then also, would you eat that? Anybody would put your hand up if you think you'd eat it? No? I'm sorry to tell you, you've all eaten it. Because it is a food additive. Frozen dairy, gelatins, puddings, non-alcoholic beverages, soft and hard candy, and chewing gum. So you've all had it, I'm sure. If you suffer from anxiety, restless sleep, it acts as a calming agent, and it also was used to treat painful periods for women. And for those of you who are adventurous, out west you can actually find beaver, or even here I believe there are some restaurants that deal with wild food that you can get beaver. And so here are some nice menu items. Today's worldwide population in 2006, as the slide shows, it was 639. But in Europe today, with modern figures from 2022, that's up to 1.2 million. So they've had a protection program similar to what we've had here in North America. China, 2016 was 700, is now estimated at 600 because of their population explosions going into a wild country. But in Mongolia, that is still relatively unpopulated, 150 in 2016, and it's now estimated to be 400. So they're gaining somewhat. In North America, in 2023, there was an estimate of 10 to 15 million. The reservoir probably has 10 or 20 of those, right? And which you say, wow, that's a lot. But prior to the fur trade, as you saw before, 100 to 200 million, maybe up to 400 million throughout North America. So the beaver's family life. The beaver has in its lodge multi-generational family unit. And it is, the beaver mates for life. If one of them does get killed, they might mate with another beaver, but usually not. And in the natural world, it is only one of 12 animals to do so. They have, in the den, they have multi-generational, as I said. They have the adult, then they have the 2-year-old, and they have the new kits. And the new kits, it is very cute, is born fully haired, opens its eyes very quickly after birth. It's weaned after 2 weeks. It weighs a pound at birth. And is evicted after 22 months and then can mate at 3 years. So the eyes are open, the incisor teeth are visible. It takes to water readily. I had spoken to someone earlier who said they'd seen a baby beaver and the baby might actually be swimming after a day. Here are young siblings feeding on willow. They're very gregarious. And the older the older beaver showing its young how to eat. Adaptations on a beaver make it very good for the areas that it lives in or for the environment that it lives in. So the first thing is the ears and the nose have internal valves so that when it dives underwater, those shut down. The nostrils actually trap air. The fur is very thick. It consists of 2 layers, the guard hair on the outside and then the felt on the inside. And the guard hair is simply to keep the dirt out, and the felt is what is waterproof. The lung and livers on a beaver are extra large and efficient. They store air and oxygen-rich blood for long dives. And the beaver can slow down its heartbeat so that it minimizes oxygen use. It can stay underwater for up to 15 minutes and can swim for over a half mile in one dive. So, and again, if you come up and look at the back paws, you can see why, because those are very broad and can propel it quite quickly. Its body is shaped like a torpedo. It has nictating eyelids, which are a third eyelid, similar to what owls have, or we have when we put on diving masks or diving goggles. So they're simply see-through, and they protect our eyes from underwater protuberances or dirt or whatever else. It increases their water vision as well, underwater vision. The beaver's teeth, as an herbivore, it has no incisors. It has molars. It has 16 molars. They're ribbed, and you can see the ribbing here that allows it to grind up the fibrous material in wood. It eats the cambium. It chews the wood to bring the tree down, but what it actually does is it eats the cambium that is the outer layer of bark and material right between the bark and the inner tree. So the beaver is a rodent, and all rodents have orange on the outside of the tooth and white on the inside. The orange is actually an infusion of iron onto the surface of the tooth. So the outside is hard, the inside is soft. And if you cup your hands, upper and lower hands, and you take the top hand and move it on the inside of the lower hand, you'll see your nails are a hard surface, the fingers are the skin is the soft, and they'll do that, and it rubs off the soft part. And then they alternate and do the same thing to the top, and what it does is continually form an a nice sharp edge. And they continually do that so that when the tooth actually grows, and if this is the beaver's jaw, out here this is the front tooth. Unlike our teeth, we have roots to our teeth, and this one, if you come up and look after it, you see it starts off as a thin, hollow skin, and then it continues and hardens and fills. And so it becomes a hard tooth. This is the front tooth, and here is the lower tooth, which is quite long, I'd say 3 inches, and that continually grows. So now I have a question. This is your homework. Actually, it'll be your work today. If a beaver constantly wears down its teeth, how much does a beaver's tooth grow in a year? Anybody know? Anybody want to guess? Young lady? Do you have a guess? 1 inch? Anybody? 4? A foot. Anybody else? All right. Ready? A beaver's teeth grow more than a foot a year. A beaver's teeth grow more than 2 feet a year. A beaver's teeth grow more than 3 feet a year. A beaver's tooth grows 48 inches in a year, which is astounding when I do it with preschool classes and they all come up and they get that tall. But every time he's chewing or eating, that's what he's doing, right? So, and just as a comparison, a squirrel that is also a rodent, its teeth grow 9 inches a year. So, and because of the constant growth, and yes, sorry.
How do you know if it's 4 feet if they keep on grinding down?
Let me take a note, I'll get back to you. Well, what they do is, I'm sure, I don't know for certain how they've done that, but I'm sure if you look at this tooth, and they can measure, you know, what the extent of this is, plus how much it grows if they mark it somehow, because they have captive beavers that they've actually been able to sort of study. And also, and I was going to show you this next slide, they also, so these are the grinding teeth, and that's the length. But if the tooth continues to grow, and a misaligned tooth will actually, in this case it did not, but in many cases it'll grow back into its eye or its head and kill it. So, and that's not just the beaver, that can happen with any rodent because the teeth are misaligned. So they have a health plan where they actually have an orthodontist on. So the beaver's tail is 12 inches long and 6 to 7 inches wide. I have a beaver's tail up here, and if this is a normal beaver, here's what an average beaver looks like in terms of length. Okay, and again, you can come up and see all this after. The tail is, as you can see here, scaly. It has no hair. It has a small amount of hair around the base of of where the tail meets the body. And the scale is in such a way so that it keeps it from sliding backwards when it's swimming. The tail has many functions. It acts as a paddle. It acts as an alarm. And and I'm sure some of you have heard this, but everybody's awake. So that, when it's out in the water, is quite alarming. I mean, quite loud. It acts as a radiator. The tail is filled with fat, and it'll pump blood through it to radiate when it's got too much heat. It also is a balance support, as you can see here, and also when it's chewing on trees, it offers the counter pressure so that it can chew on, so that its teeth have good pressure on the tree. And a rudder, just like not a rudder, but a diving plane, just as a submarine that turns it, when it slaps it, it puts its body in the right position to go down quickly. So that's all connected. The beaver also has a flap behind its teeth so that it can keep water from going down its throat and also keep splinters and things from entering while it's underwater. The front paws are relatively small. They have very strong nails on them, and what they do is they fist them up when they're swimming, hold them to their chest, and use them as fenders to fend off trees or things that they might encounter underwater. And they use them to dig as well, because later on I'll show you how it builds its lodge, and it uses its front paws for that. So you can see here, when it takes the stick that it eats similar to what, and again, here I have some sticks where you have teeth marks, but it puts it between its nails like this and rotates it just like we do with corn, just to take off that cambium layer. And one of the things I do with kids is give them one of those chocolate dipped wafers and tell them that you're a beaver, but you can't eat anything but the chocolate. And that's exactly what a beaver does with the tree, right? In the springtime, when you go around the reservoir or a pond or wherever that is still water, you'll find a lot of those sticks because they ate them during the winter under the ice and then they float up. The rear paws are very big. They're 6 inches long, they're webbed, and when they're spread out, they're equal to or longer than they are, equal to or wider than they are long. So that means that they have a lot of push power. The other thing is when you come up here, you'll find that it has a split toenail. And you say, oh, that poor beaver, bad manicure. No, it is actually part of nature's design. And what they do, here you can see it up here, the split toenail is their knit comb. Any of you that had kids in school will know what a knit comb is, and that's what the beaver does. He cleans his fur constantly and consistently to make sure that it's waterproof. So you can see here on the lower picture how big those paws are in comparison to his body, and that really propels him through. Speed of 5 to 6 miles per hour. And on this side, you can see the torpedo shape of the body. So one of the things we had talked about was the engineering of the habitat. And the reason it does that is for food and for shelter. So one of the things that it does is when it dams a stream or a river, what it's creating is the beaver is very clumsy on land, but it is a superb swimmer. So it wants to be in the water wherever possible. And what happens is when it dams a river, the pond increases, and now that edge of the pond allows it to get to more food. And as it chops down the trees on the side where it's gotten to, it raises the dam, the water goes out even further. And it continually does that until the food source is exhausted. When the food source is exhausted, it hikes out and goes to a new place. And you can see it has a wide variety of food, from trees to grasses. And in season, it'll even take corn, apples, wheat, and oats. It needs about, on a daily basis, between 20 and 72 ounces of bark a day. So that's quite a lot of chewing. You can see here some of the tree felling that it's done. And I've always liked this picture, because what it's doing there is it's making smaller chunks to take down to its den. And I've got some of them there. It can topple, and that's approximately a 5-inch birch. Now, birch is a hardwood, a relatively hardwood. It will topple that tree in 15 minutes. So it chews quite rapidly. And it will produce, on a tree of that size, it will produce about 140 chips. And again, if you come up and look at those chips, if any of you are woodworkers and use a chisel, those chips are huge. To take a hammer and use a chisel, you'd have to give it pretty hard blows. So those teeth are sharp. If you go out into nature, obviously, if you see those little sticks, that's a sign. But another sign, this is one that's been chewed quite a bit. Another sign is the stump, and you can see the teeth marks as it sort of chops it down. And the colony helps to chop the pieces up and bring it back to the dam or to the lodge. Usually big pieces like this are used on the dam after they've taken the bark, the cambium off, and smaller twigs and things are added to the lodge. Beaver signs out in the field. Canals and channels. If you run across one of those, do not step into the channel. It's about that wide, but it's about 4 or 5 feet deep. So if you do, you'll end up to your chest in water. And the reason for that is because now when it can't extend the pond anymore, what it's done is by making these channels, it accesses the food and it allows it to bring it back. And the secondary thing with that is that it takes the mud and puts it on its lodge. So those channels are quite deep and quite, not fast moving, but mucky. Rarely do you see a trail across land because, as I said, a beaver hates to move on land, it waddles. And the trail is usually one that connects to another pond or to somewhere where it has, I don't know, McDonald's wants to get to. But it's very rare that you see that. The other thing that you see more of are signposts. They're scent mounts that they use the castoreum on around the lake edges, pond edges. It tells a lot of information about the beaver who's there. I'm a male, I'm this old, this is my territory, don't come and bother me. And if you ever run across one, it's strong enough that you can smell it as well. Beavers do not hibernate. They're active all year round. But you don't necessarily see them because they stay underwater. In the fall or when the first ice is in, they drain a bit off the pond so that there's an air gap under the ice, and they'll be in the water in the water or in its lodge all winter long. So this was actually a pond behind my house, and right in the tree groups, there was an exit hole, and you can see it right there. So it's usually hidden or so that it can access some of its favorite food in the winter. The other thing that it does, and here's more signs, the tracks that you see, and again, you'll see when you come up to see the paws, the shape that it is, with these webbed feet that you can see in the mud. Okay, maybe we'll see, I think I have another slide with the food piles, but when it has its lodge, what it does is around where there are exits and entrances underwater, nothing on top. The only thing that comes out of the, in the open air is a vent hole, and the food piles are around its entrances. So that all it has to do is go out into the water, it can grab a stick, one of these little saplings, and eat it or bring it back into the lodge. And I have a picture of the food piles after. So a beaver will, when it's building the dam, will continue to place its sticks crisscrossing it. When it starts the construction, it starts in the center and places the sticks with the heel downriver and with the point upriver, so that the water is forced just as we build a dam. And if it's a very strong stream, it'll actually build a bow in the dam so that it withstands the water pressure, the water flow. It will then bring, once it's placed the sticks, it'll bring in mud and poke it in with its hands, with its paws, and fill in the gaps. It will also bring in rocks and a general myth is that it can take mud on its tail. It does not use its tail for hauling mud. It brings the mud in paws like this, and it also uses its paws to roll stones on the bottom of the lake, or if they're light enough to bring them in. A pair of beavers can dam a small stream in 2 to 3 days, and dam building is actually an instinctive action triggered by the sound of running water. So if you have a dam and you go and open it, you'll find that the next day it's closed again because the beaver heard the running water and closed it. And the reason why they found this to be an instinct was in Sweden, Lars Wilson had a captive beaver that he kept, and when he put it in a bathtub and ran the water, the beaver wanted to dam it up. So, there's the beaver hauling the mud and bringing it to the dam. And if you've ever gone across the dam, you know that it's a pretty solid construction, and usually comes out in a large triangle, larger at the base. Beavers in rivers will do bank dams so that it doesn't have any kind of stick construction. You might see some stick construction, which is actually the food pile in front of the den mouth, but the den goes into the bank. Other than that, they build quite high. The dams can be built quite high. I never realized that. Sorry. Can be built quite high. For fast streams, they go from the sides to the middle and curve upstream to withstand the force of water. They use, and you can see in this picture here, they don't have any trees, but they use rocks. So they'll use the materials that are available. And in summer, the lodge is surrounded by water. Predators don't get to it easily. And in winter, it's surrounded by ice, but the lodge itself is frozen solid. And so it's very hard to dig into. Bears, wolves, whatever that want to dig in can't get to it. So here's a cross-section of the beaver lodge. And you see there are no entrances above the water line. All the entrances are below the water line. And so the water level in the lodge itself is above a certain area, and they can swim into it. There's a dripping area here where they have to take a hot shower and leave their mud boots. And then you've got a sleeping food area. And the interesting thing is, if you do have a beaver lodge that you've located in wintertime, when it's really cold, if you go out, you can get onto the beaver lodge, and there's an air shaft. You can actually see the steam coming out of it. Just like a chimney when the cold weather, when we're burning firewood. And it actually smells like damp mud. So they're in there. The inner chamber has a level where they can come out, drip, as I said, a mud room, and then an upper level for resting. Each beaver has its own soft bed of shredded wood chips built on a shelf a little above the main floor. So I've talked to some of you that said, oh, I've got one that's like 10, 15 feet in diameter. They will build a small lodge when there's only 2 of them, and as they add children, just like we do, we add to our houses, they add to their houses. And if a beaver family has a lot of food, is relatively safe, those lodges can be quite big, because they will have not any beaver over 22 months, but a large number of beavers. So here's the feed pile. You can see the entrance is here, and this is where it's been piled up, small twigs and smaller sticks, that then they can swim. This obviously has been drained, but they can swim out and pick out their food. So reliable food sources result in ponds or lakes that can cover 1 to 200 acres. So that's quite huge. And dams that can be anywhere from 8 to 11 feet high. And the lodges, large ones, 28 to 35 feet in diameter and 6 to 7 feet tall. So that is good food. And here's an aerial picture where you can see dams here's a big dam. Hang on a second. So here's a big dam. There are several dams, and this site is probably several decades old, where the beavers have moved up and down the river. And you can see there's quite a bit of shrubbery and the kind of food that they like. The problem with beavers as well is that they can cause widespread destruction. Here's a picture that I took in North Hero, and this basically happened within a 2-week period. And all these trees were just felled. I guess they had a bunch of teenagers move in, and juveniles, and decide that they were going to build a lodge in there. This here is a 2009 a train derailment in Mattawa, Ottawa, Ontario, where a beaver dam broke, and the amount of water that was released flooded and tore the railroad apart. Here's a friend of mine who had several poplar trees that were targets for the beaver, and these trees were probably 16, 17 inches in diameter, so pretty big. And what they did was they girdled it and killed it, basically, because the cambium didn't feed it. Now, the other thing too is sometimes you'll see pictures, and I have some pictures of where you see beaver chew probably 6 foot up. Well, that's because either the snow was deep or the area was flooded and allowed it to go up. So depending on what the area is, they'll chew wherever they can get at it. Yikes, Mom! Predators! Off it goes. So, predators, the serious predators for beaver are mountain lion, lynx, wolf, bobcat, and sometimes bear. Juveniles can be taken by coyotes, eagles, and large owls. But the most lethal predator is man. We can decimate a beaver population very quickly. Also, fatal diseases. Tularemia is a plague-like disease caused by bacterium, and it affects the liver. It's fatal to all ages and can wipe out a total population in an area. And giardia, or giardiasis, is an intestinal disorder. Now, I'm sure none of you do this, but if you go walking and you want to take a sip because you're thirsty, do not take it from a mountain stream. Although it looks healthy, or it looks very safe, the bacteria in it can give you an internal parasite, and that's humans, and you suffer from diarrhea for quite an abdominal discomfort and prolonged diarrhea. So do not do that. There are some notable constructions in terms of size. Lippincott writes about a dam that was 800 feet and 8 feet above the water level on a downstream side. In Wyoming, there was one that was 30 feet wide, but 18 feet tall. Wisconsin, 12 feet high, 640 feet long. And Lewis Morgan wrote of one that was 450 feet long, with an 18-foot thick base. And at that time, they estimated it to have contained approximately 250 tons of material. But the biggest one can be seen from space. So this is in Canada, in Alberta. It's 2,790 feet long, which is twice the length of Hoover Dam. And you can see the downside, the river, the dam is on the northern side, I guess, on this side. And that's where the length comes in, and all the water flows that way. So there are various beaver lodges in that dam, and you can see here it was, and that's after it started being dammed and created. So, and here's one in Buffalo. You can see the arrows, the active dams and the inactive dams. Beavers will, once a site is exhausted, it will move upstream and find a new site and keep going up. Or the young will go upstream and then branch off into tributaries. And there's that dam in northern Canada. So beavers, pros and cons. The cons, it creates warm, stagnant water where once a river flowed or a stream flowed, which affects trout survival because the water becomes warm and the trout needs swift, cold water to survive. It inhibits the migration of trout and salmon, and it causes extensive property damage to trees. Everybody's had a favorite tree that a beaver took down. I know my father was always like, "Argh!" But the pros, in my opinion, outweigh the cons. It creates wetland habitats for a wide variety of wildlife and plants. The ponds hold back the water in times of drought. Ponds also help to slow the water and erosion if at high water flow or even a normal water flow. And it raises the ground table water, which is an important, out west they have aquifers. The aquifers need to be restored, and the beaver sort of dams up the water so it can leak down. Here in New England, we have bedrock close to the surface. Everything, that's why we have such flood-prone areas. But the beaver dams will also help mitigate the flow of that water and slow it down, and also restore some of our wells. So, and it also purifies the water through filtration. Here's that beaver dam with the food pile I had shown you earlier that was in my backyard. And this is, I'm not sure if someone drained it or if they abandoned it because the food sources weren't there anymore. They like aspen, they like willow. If those kinds of trees disappear, then they tend to move on. So ponds fall into disrepair, they leak, and eventually surface dries out, forming a beaver meadow. And then seedlings grow on the fertile soil, and that whole cycle starts again, because in 20 years or 10 years, depending on what grows, there's new food source, beaver moves in again. So, the world's largest beaver in northwest Alberta, 15 feet tall, 28 feet long, weighs 3,000 pounds. And if you thought you had a bad day, this guy got the assignment to go take photographs inside a lodge. It's hot, cramped quarters, filled with insects, snakes, and small animals, and probably very smelly. And I wanted to thank you. Oh, where did it go? Oh, my thank you slide disappeared, but thank you. Thank you very much. Before I take questions, I need 3 volunteers because I have 3 beaver coats that you can try on and walk around and have people feel them. So are there any volunteers that I might ask? Come on up. Come on up. Oh, I have a big one. I have 3, so I have 2 volunteers. Anybody else? Sir, hang on.
Imagine those are quite warm.
Good coat for ice fishing.
Yeah. Come on, step over into the line. So that one is the little rip. Where's my young lady? Hup.
Look at around for Sheila. Say, a good coat for her winter canoe outings.
There. Notice what a beaver coat does to a guy, right? Beg your pardon? Well, so the coat on the furthest right is a sheared beaver coat. In other words, the guard hair have been taken off. This is a full haired coat with the guard hair on it. And this one, I actually got a call that a lady, so also I just wanted to reassure everybody, I do not kill anything that I have here. Most of the things were either donated or were roadkill, and I get the roadkill because I have a roadkill restaurant. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding. But, so a lady did a Facebook thing and said, I have a beaver coat that my mother wore, I will never wear. Is there anybody out there? And there were like lots of people. And a lot of people said, Kurt Valenta does education, maybe he's the one. And sure enough, she called me up and said, I would like to donate this coat. This coat was her mother's, and it's signed on the inside. Yeah. Yeah. Are those your initials too? And these 2 were actually my father's. So, would you guys mind going and letting people touch them? And I need, since you volunteered, there's one other thing I got. Okay, so you can stay. Just, would you wander around? So, the one other thing is, the young lady volunteered, right? Everybody heard her volunteer? One of the things my father always told me is, do not volunteer for something you don't know what you're volunteering for. And what she volunteered for was, I'm going to show you all of the adaptations a beaver has. So, okay, are you ready? What do I do? Hang on, hang on. Hang on a second. May I just, I'm not done yet. Oh. Not done yet. The first thing I want to show you is that a beaver has fantastic lungs. You've already got the coat, right? All right. The beaver also has nictating eyelids. Oops, hang on. Okay.
Glacier god.
Yeah. The beaver also has good back feet. Just step on there. All right. And the beaver also has ears that have plugs. Oops, sorry. Okay.
That's the Easter beaver.
Yeah. The beaver also has a tail that is used as a paddle, right? And the beaver also has, now, you have a choice. You can wear a mask if you want.
Okay, for the presentation.
Right.
Yeah, my ears are in the way.
Here, let me hold.
Adaptation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I also have.
We'll just call it Bucky from now.
Yeah. So there you are. And the one other thing is the scent and waterproofing of the castrum. Now, the one thing I did not bring because it was 70 degrees out is a fur hat that goes on. And you would, yeah, and you would be, so. Thank you, beaver. There's all the adaptation. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for getting a good sport.
Beaver urine repel anything or attract things? Because like hunting, we use like raccoon urine and fox urine to, you know, repel things.
You okay?
Oh yeah, it just got caught in my
Yeah.
body thing.
I am not a hunter. I do not know that answer.
Okay.
And have not run across it. So here, I'll hold that and take the. It's what?
There you are.
Thank you.
I bought my wife some raccoon feet for Christmas.
To keep her away from what? Nah, never mind.
So when you're in the woods, you don't the one that's over by the boat.
Oh, she's a hunter. She's a hunter. Okay, sorry.
Not really.
I just decided not to stick around, but I guess I need.
See, the one thing I forgot was the knit comb for the split nail.
No, 'cause
Thank you.
You said they eat vegetation,
Yeah.
right? So anything like
Alfalfa, corn, apples,
probably
wood.
apples, they'll be
Yeah.
wood.
Thank you for your
But their main thing is the
cambium. Sorry, I'm just. So the beaver pelts that I got were actually from a thank you, from a trapper that was getting out of the business because it didn't pay.
It doesn't, oh wow, it doesn't pay anymore?
Yeah, it doesn't pay anymore. Thank you for your,
yeah, but they're beautiful coats.
they
I
are.
think the one I have.
Check out look how heavy they
I think
are.
it's beaver. I think it's what's the other one?
Mink?
That'd be
Otter, mink.
I don't think it's mink.
But did you notice how heavy it is?
Yeah, no, it seemed like, I don't know, it's like a quality thing, they don't make coats that are heavy.
Yeah.
But it was,
Usually when I have someone wear this, they go,
I know, it feels luxurious.
I've tried them on before, they are good.
okay. So, here.
I gotta try this on.
Is the
I
price
bought a
of beaver
mink
pelts
coat.
so depressed because of the number of beavers that we have?
No, because the fur market, there are very few. It's like this,
In
they.
general, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Anyway, yeah, just thank you. Thanks.
Of course, thank you. That was fun. Great presentation.
Oh, thank you very much.
I have a gross question to ask. Do they do most of their defecation in water and not in the den, right?
Yes.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
They won't want to mess up.
It's, I collect all kinds of things, and that is one of the hardest things to collect because the scat floats.
Yeah. Oh, it floats.
A wedding.
I don't think mine.
You got holes in your armpits there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the man. That's my father's,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, it's the same with this.
They don't eat nuts. They eat like.
No, but they eat frogs and they eat lizards. Yeah.
You gotta try that. You gotta try that one on. I think that one's more.
Great, great.
So this is the male. You want to see how heavy this is?
Check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta put the thing on, it's like 100 pounds.